The summer heat pressed against my skin like a warning as I stood in my bedroom doorway, staring at something that didn't belong. A single earring on my nightstand. Rose gold, delicate, expensive. Not mine. My husband Daniel had left for his morning run 20 minutes ago. The sheets still held the warmth of his body, and there, catching the light from the window, sat proof that someone else had been in our bed. My hands trembled as I picked it up, the metal cold despite the Arizona heat flooding through our Tempe home. I turned it over in my palm, studying the small diamond embedded in the design. This wasn't some cheap accessory. This belonged to someone who could afford luxury, someone who'd been here recently enough that I'd never noticed it before. I set it back down exactly where I'd found it. My mind raced through possibilities, excuses, explanations that might make this innocent. But 35 years of living had taught me to trust my instincts, and right now every instinct I had was screaming. Before we continue, I want to share something with you. This is Revenge Stories, a home for quiet courage and true endings. If you feel my words, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Help us build this community so we can bring more interesting and exciting stories for you from around the world. Your help is much appreciated. Your voice matters here. Your story matters too. I'm Victoria Hayes. For 12 years, I'd been married to Daniel Hayes, a commercial real estate developer whose charm had swept me off my feet when I was 23. Back then, I'd been a paralegal at a mid-sized firm in Phoenix, ambitious but still finding my footing. He was 30, established, confident. He made me feel like I'd finally arrived at the life I was supposed to have. We built a beautiful home in Tempe, entertained clients on our backyard patio, took trips to San Diego and Santa Fe. From the outside, we were the perfect couple. His career flourished. Mine stalled when I left my job to support his networking demands. The endless dinners and golf tournaments where wives were expected to smile and be gracious. I told myself it was temporary, that once he made partner at Meridian Properties, I'd go back to law school like I'd always planned. But 12 years passed and that someday never came. Now I stood in our bedroom, holding evidence that my marriage might be a lie. I forced myself to breathe slowly, to think clearly. The earring had been placed on my nightstand, not hidden under the bed or lost in the sheets. That meant carelessness. Whoever had been here felt comfortable enough to be reckless. I walked through our house with new eyes. The living room looked normal, kitchen spotless, the way I'd left it after making Daniel's breakfast. His coffee cup still sat in the sink, lipstick stain on the rim that definitely wasn't my shade. My stomach dropped. I'd made him coffee this morning. Black. No sugar, the way he always took it. That cup had been clean when I handed it to him, which meant someone else had used it, someone who'd been here while I was still in the house. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't some affair happening in hotel rooms or during business trips. This was happening in my home, in my space, while I was here. I grabbed my phone and checked the timestamp on the security camera Daniel had installed last year. He'd said it was for protection, to monitor the front door while we were away. Now I wondered what he was really protecting. The footage showed Daniel leaving at 6:15 for his run, just like always. But at 6:45, a silver BMW pulled into our driveway. A woman got out. Even from the grainy footage, I could see she was beautiful. Tall, dark hair, designer workout clothes that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. She didn't knock. She used a key. I watched her let herself into my house like she belonged there. Watched her disappear inside. The timestamp showed she stayed for 37 minutes. Left at 7:22, just 10 minutes before Daniel returned from his run. I played it back 3 times, memorizing every detail. The way she'd checked her phone before getting out of the car, the confidence in her stride, the fact that she had a key to my home. My hands shook as I took screenshots, saved the video file to my phone, backed it up to the cloud. Evidence. I was collecting evidence like I used to do at the law firm before I'd given up that life. The front door opened. Daniel's voice called out, cheerful and oblivious. "Vic, I'm back. You want to grab lunch later?" I closed my laptop carefully, composing my face into something neutral. Maybe. Let me check my schedule. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, sweaty from his run, smile easy. The same man I'd woken up next to for 12 years. How long had he been lying to me? "You okay?" He grabbed a water bottle from the fridge. "You look pale." "Just a headache." The lie came smoothly. "Probably the heat. Take something for it." He kissed my forehead, and I had to force myself not to flinch away. "I've got a site visit at 10, but I'll be home by 6. We can order from that Italian place you like." "Sure," I managed to smile. "Sounds good." After he showered and left for work, I sat alone in our house and let myself feel it. The betrayal, the humiliation, the rage that burned so hot it made my vision blur. But underneath all that, something else emerged, something colder and sharper. I'd spent 12 years being the perfect wife, supporting his career, putting my dreams on hold. I'd made myself small so he could be big. Not anymore. I pulled out my laptop and started making lists. First, I needed information. Who was she? How long had this been going on? What else was Daniel hiding? The security footage had captured her license plate. I wrote down the number, started a search through the online databases I still had access to from my paralegal days. Within an hour, I had a name, Melissa Crawford, 28 years old, marketing director at Pinnacle Group, one of Meridian Properties' biggest clients. Of course, it was always someone from work, wasn't it? I pulled up her social media, studied her life displayed in carefully curated photos. She was everything I wasn't anymore. Young, ambitious, career-focused, the woman I'd been when Daniel and I met. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone buzzed. Daniel's text. "Forgot to mention, working late tonight, don't wait up." Working late. The oldest excuse in the book? I texted back, "No problem, I'll save you leftovers." Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened a private browser and searched for private investigators in Phoenix. But as I scrolled through the listings, something stopped me. Why pay someone else to find the truth when I could find it myself? I still had skills, research, documentation, attention to detail. I'd spent years doing investigative work for attorneys. I knew how to build a case, how to gather evidence that would hold up under scrutiny. And I had something a private investigator didn't have: access to Daniel's life, his schedule, his habits. I knew when he'd be home, when he'd be gone, what his patterns were. I opened a new document and titled it simply, Evidence. Then I started writing down everything I knew. The earring, the lipstick on the coffee cup, the security footage, Melissa Crawford's name and details, Daniel's text about working late. This was just the beginning. Over the next week, I transformed into someone I didn't recognize, someone careful and calculating, someone who smiled at her husband over breakfast while cataloging his lies. Daniel said he had site visits, but I checked his location through the Find My app we'd set up years ago for emergencies. He was at hotels, nice ones, the kind with restaurants where they served expensive wine and had rooms available for rent by the hour if you knew who to ask. He said he had client dinners, but I found credit card receipts for 2 at intimate bistros in Scottsdale. Places we'd never been together because they were too expensive when I suggested them. He said he was working late, but our home office sat dark and empty while I tracked his phone to Melissa's apartment complex in downtown Phoenix. Every lie I documented, every inconsistency I photographed, every receipt, every text, every suspicious phone call that he took in another room, I logged it all with timestamps and details. I became a ghost in my own house, invisible and watching. And Daniel noticed nothing. He was too confident, too comfortable in his deception. He'd gotten away with it for so long that he'd stopped being careful. That would be his mistake. 2 weeks after finding the earring, I was organizing his home office, legitimately this time, when I found the second phone, hidden in his desk drawer beneath old files and forgotten business cards. My heart raced as I powered it on. No password. He hadn't even bothered to lock it. The messages were all there, months of them. Him and Melissa planning their meetups, discussing their future, discussing me. "When are you going to tell her?" Melissa had texted last month. "Soon. I need to time it right. The house is in both our names. We could be together now if you'd just do it." "I know, baby. I'm working on it. She won't get half of everything if I'm smart about this." I read through every message, my hands steady despite the fury building in my chest. They'd been together for 8 months. He'd been planning to leave me, but only after he'd figured out how to keep most of our assets. There were messages about offshore accounts I didn't know about. Property purchases, in his name only. Money being moved, hidden, shifted away from anything I might claim in a divorce. Daniel wasn't just cheating. He was robbing me. Systematically. Calculating. Planning to leave me with nothing after 12 years of supporting his dreams. I took photos of everything, every message, every financial discussion, every piece of evidence that showed his intent to defraud me in the divorce he was planning. Then I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it and walked calmly to our bedroom, sat on the edge of our bed and let myself feel the full weight of it. He'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. While I'd been making his breakfast and ironing his shirts and playing the dutiful wife at his business functions, he'd been preparing to discard me like I was nothing. The phone call came that evening, Daniel's voice, apologetic and smooth. "Vic, I'm so sorry. Emergency at the Phoenix site. Pipes burst. I'll be here all night managing contractors." "That's terrible." I kept my voice concerned. "Do you need me to bring you anything? Coffee? Dinner?" No. The crew has everything. I'll just crash in the site office. Love you." "Love you too." I hung up and checked his location. He was at Melissa's apartment. This time, I did something different. I got in my car and drove there myself. The apartment complex was upscale, modern, the kind with a pool and fitness center and 24-hour security that looked impressive, but didn't actually pay attention. I parked across the street and waited. At 8:30, I saw them through her third-floor window. Daniel and Melissa sharing wine on her balcony, his arm around her waist. They looked happy, comfortable, like a real couple. I took photos with the zoom lens I'd bought specifically for this purpose. Clear shots of them together, date-stamped and geo-tagged. Then I drove home and added everything to my evidence file. The next morning, Daniel came home at 7, showered, and kissed my cheek like nothing had happened. "How'd you sleep?" "Fine." I handed him coffee. "How was the site emergency?" "Exhausting, but we got it handled." He sipped the coffee, not meeting my eyes. "I need to go into the office early. Big presentation this afternoon." "Good luck." I smiled. "I believe in you." After he left, I sat alone in our kitchen and made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him. Not yet. Confrontation would give him time to hide more assets, delete evidence, prepare his defense. I'd seen it happen in dozens of divorce cases at the law firm. The moment someone knew they were caught, they started covering their tracks. No, I needed to be smarter than that. I called Catherine Morrison, the attorney I'd found online. She specialized in high-asset divorces and fraud cases. Her consultation fee was expensive, but worth every penny. In her office downtown, I laid out everything I'd gathered: the security footage, the messages from the burner phone, the financial discussions, the photos of Daniel with Melissa. Catherine leaned back in her leather chair, impressed. "Victoria, this is exceptional documentation. You could teach a class on evidence gathering." I used to be a paralegal. It shows. She reviewed my files on her computer. This is clear evidence of dissipation of marital assets, intent to defraud. The judge is going to hate him. What do I need to do? Keep documenting, but don't let him know you're on to him. The longer he thinks he's getting away with it, the more evidence he'll create. She opened a legal pad. Meanwhile, we'll start preparing your divorce filing. Asset disclosure, discovery requests, forensic accounting of his hidden accounts. How long will this take? To build an airtight case? A few more weeks, maybe a month. Can you wait that long? I thought about 12 years of my life invested in this man. 12 years of being pushed aside, made small, treated like I was disposable. I can wait. My voice was steady. I want to do this right. Catherine smiled. Then let's make sure he regrets underestimating you. Over the next month, I became a master of deception, not the messy, emotional kind that Daniel practiced, the strategic kind, the kind built on patience and planning. I played the perfect wife, made his favorite meals, laughed at his jokes, asked about his day with genuine seeming interest. And the whole time, I was documenting everything. Catherine hired a forensic accountant who found 3 offshore accounts Daniel had opened over the past 2 years. Money transferred in small amounts that wouldn't trigger reporting requirements. Nearly $400,000 hidden away. Money that should have been marital property. We found property he'd purchased in his mother's name. A condo in Scottsdale worth $500,000. Rental income flowing into accounts I'd never heard of. Every discovery made me angrier, but channeled that anger into focus, into building a case so comprehensive that Daniel wouldn't have anywhere to hide. The breakthrough came when I finally accessed his laptop. He'd left it open one Saturday morning while he showered. I worked quickly, installing monitoring software that would send me copies of everything he typed. Within days, I had passwords to accounts I didn't know existed. Email exchanges with his lawyer, the one he'd secretly consulted about divorce strategy. Messages to Melissa about their plans to move to California after the divorce was final. "She'll get the house, but that's it," he'd written. "Everything else is protected. My lawyer says she doesn't have grounds for anything more." His lawyer was wrong. By mid-September, Catherine told me we were ready. I've never seen a divorce case with this much documentation. Financial fraud, adultery, dissipation of assets. You're going to get everything you're entitled to, Victoria, and he's going to face consequences. When do we file? Whenever you're ready. I thought about it carefully. Daniel had a major deal closing at the end of the month. A commercial project he'd been working on for 2 years, his big career moment. "Let's wait until October 1st, I said. "Let him have his moment, then we'll take everything else." Catherine raised an eyebrow. "That's cold. He earned it." The deal closed on September 28th. Daniel came home that evening ecstatic, champagne in hand. "We did it, Vic. The biggest deal in my career. They're talking about making me partner." "That's wonderful." I hugged him. feeling nothing but the satisfaction of perfect timing. I'm so proud of you. We toasted with champagne. He talked about our future, completely oblivious that I was planning to destroy his. 3 days later, on October 1st, Daniel was served with divorce papers at his office. I wasn't there to see his face, but I can imagine it. Shock, confusion, then rage when he read through the filing and saw everything I knew, the adultery, the hidden assets, the fraud, all of it documented with evidence he couldn't deny. My phone rang within the hour, Daniel's voice shaking with fury. "What the hell is this, Victoria? Divorce papers. I thought they were self-explanatory. You can't just... This is insane. We need to talk about this." "We're past talking, Daniel. You should have thought about conversation before you gave your girlfriend a key to our house." Silence, then quieter. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to document everything. The affair, the hidden money, your plans to leave me with nothing. I know all of it." "Victoria, please, let's just read the filing carefully. My attorney has been very thorough. You'll find we've frozen the offshore accounts, placed liens on the properties you thought I didn't know about, and filed fraud charges with the court." "Fraud charges? You can't..." "I can, and I did. You tried to hide marital assets, Daniel. That's illegal. The court tends to frown on that." Another long silence. I could almost hear him calculating, trying to find an angle. "If you drop this," he finally said, "we can work something out. Split things fairly. No lawyers, no fighting." "Fairly?" I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to my ears. "Like how you were planning to split things. Leave me with the house and nothing else while you disappeared to California with $400,000 I wasn't supposed to know about? I don't know what you think you found, but I found everything, Daniel. Every account, every message, every lie. I was a paralegal, remember? You really thought I wouldn't know how to build a case?" I could hear him breathing hard. "This is going to get ugly. It's already ugly. You made it ugly when you decided I was disposable." I kept my voice calm, matter of fact. "My attorney will be in touch about the asset disclosure deadline. I suggest you comply fully. The court really doesn't like it when people lie during discovery." I hung up before he could respond. That night, I sat alone in our house, Daniel's half of the closet empty where he'd frantically packed and left. The silence should have been lonely. Instead, it felt like relief. My phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. "He's already calling his lawyer. This is going to be interesting." I smiled and typed back, "Good. Let him try to explain away evidence." The divorce proceedings were exactly as ugly as Daniel promised. His attorney tried everything, claimed the offshore accounts were legitimate business holdings, argued the property in his mother's name had always been separate, suggested I was mentally unstable for stalking my own husband. But every claim fell apart under the weight of evidence I'd gathered. Bank records showing systematic transfer of marital funds, messages where he discussed hiding assets, photos of him with Melissa, time-stamped and geotagged. The judge, a stern woman named Patricia Walsh, grew visibly annoyed with Daniel's attorney by the third hearing. "Counsel," she interrupted during another creative explanation, "your client opened offshore accounts without his wife's knowledge, transferred marital assets, purchased property in a third party's name, and conducted an affair while planning to defraud his spouse in divorce proceedings. The evidence is overwhelming. I suggest you stop wasting the court's time and negotiate a settlement." Daniel's face had gone pale. He'd walked into court confident, his expensive attorney promising they'd handle this quickly. Now he sat rigid in his chair, watching his carefully constructed plans collapse. The settlement negotiations took 3 weeks. Catherine was merciless. "Your client committed fraud," she told Daniel's attorney during mediation. "The court could award my client everything. We're being generous by offering a 60-40 split." 60-40 is not standard. Neither is hiding $400,000 in offshore accounts. Would you like us to pursue criminal charges as well? Because dissipation of marital assets can be prosecuted. They settled for 65% in my favor. I got the house, my share of his retirement accounts, half of the discovered hidden assets, and a portion of his future partnership earnings. The total came to just over $1.2 million. Daniel would have to sell his beloved condo, liquidate investments, and work for years to recover financially. I felt no sympathy. The final hearing was November 15th. Judge Walsh signed the dissolution decree and looked directly at Daniel. "Mr. Hayes, I want to be very clear about something. This court takes financial fraud seriously. You attempted to systematically hide assets from your spouse, someone who supported your career for over a decade. That behavior is not only unethical, it's illegal. Consider yourself fortunate that Mrs. Hayes chose not to pursue criminal charges." Daniel said nothing, just stared at the table. "You're dismissed." Walsh's gavel came down with finality. Outside the courthouse, Daniel tried one last time. "Vic, wait." I stopped, turned, looked at the man I'd loved for 12 years and felt absolutely nothing. "Was it worth it?" he asked quietly. "Destroying everything?" "I didn't destroy anything, Daniel. You did that yourself." I adjusted my purse on my shoulder. "I just made sure you didn't get away with it." "I never meant to hurt you." "Yes, you did. You planned it for months. The only thing you didn't mean to do was get caught." He opened his mouth, closed it again. What could he say? I had screenshots of him planning my financial destruction. "Melissa left, you know," he said finally, "when she found out about the settlement. Turns out she wasn't interested in me without the money. That must be difficult for you." My voice was flat. Learning that someone was using you, pretending to care, while actually planning to take everything you had. I can't imagine what that feels like. The sarcasm landed, his face flushed with anger and shame. "Goodbye, Daniel." I walked away without looking back. 6 months later, I stood in the law school library at Arizona State University. My first semester textbooks spread across the table. At 35, I was finally pursuing the dream I'd deferred for 12 years. The settlement money had given me freedom, paid off the house, covered tuition, let me focus on studying without worrying about bills or rent or compromising for someone else's ambitions. My phone buzzed. A message from Catherine. "Heard Daniel's partnership fell through. Melissa is suing him for breach of promise. Thought you'd appreciate the irony." I did appreciate it, but mostly I was too busy with torts and civil procedure to care much about Daniel's continued disasters. That evening, I met my study group at a coffee shop near campus. 5 other women, all returning to school after various life disruptions. Divorces, career changes, reinventions. "How's the case brief coming?" Sarah, a former teacher, asked me. "Almost done. The precedent analysis is tricky, but I think I've got it." "You're going to be a terrifying attorney," Maria said, grinning. "Remind me never to lie to you about anything." "Good policy." I smiled back. We studied until the shop closed, then walked out into the Phoenix night, still warm even in spring. The city lights spread out before us, full of possibility. I'd spent 12 years making myself small, making someone else's life bigger, believing that was what love required. Now I knew better. Real love doesn't ask you to shrink, doesn't hide assets or plan betrayals, doesn't give someone else keys to your house while pretending you're the only one. Real love is honest, respectful, equal. And if I never found that kind of love again, that would be fine, because I'd found something better. I'd found myself again. Back in my house that night, I made tea and opened my laptop. My family law textbook sat beside me, passages highlighted in yellow. Tomorrow I had a mock trial in legal writing. Next week, finals. My life was full in ways it hadn't been for years. School, friends, goals that were mine alone. Daniel had tried to take everything from me. In the end, he'd given me the push I needed to take everything back. My phone buzzed one last time before bed, a number I didn't recognize. Is this Victoria Hayes? This is Rebecca Tran from Women's Legal Aid. Catherine Morrison gave me your number. She said you might be interested in volunteering once you finish first year. We help women navigate divorce and domestic issues. I read the message twice, feeling something warm expand in my chest. Very interested, I typed back. I'd love to help. Because that's what this had taught me. Not just how to fight for myself, but why it mattered. How many women stayed in situations like mine, not knowing how to gather evidence, build cases, protect themselves? I could teach them, show them the same skills I'd use to escape, turn my pain into someone else's power. I closed my laptop and looked around my quiet house, my space, my sanctuary, my fresh start. Daniel had thought I was disposable, easy to manipulate, too dependent to fight back. He'd learned otherwise the hard way, and every woman who came after me would learn from his mistakes too. I smiled to myself, feeling something I hadn't felt in 12 years, pride, pure, uncomplicated pride in who I'd become. The judge was right during that final hearing. I could have destroyed Daniel completely. Criminal charges, public exposure, total financial ruin. But I'd taken something he couldn't recover from, his confidence, his certainty, that he could manipulate people without consequences. That was enough. Justice doesn't always look like revenge. Sometimes it looks like walking away with your dignity intact and your future secured. Sometimes it looks like a 35-year-old woman in a law school library, finally chasing dreams she'd deferred too long. Sometimes it looks like freedom. I finished my tea, turned off the lights, and went to bed in my quiet house. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new readings to complete, new skills to master. But tonight, I slept peacefully for the first time in years. The war was over, and I had won. This is Revenge Stories, a home for quiet courage and true endings. If you felt Victoria's journey tonight, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share in the comments where you're watching from. Help us build this community so we can bring more stories of strength and survival from around the world. Your help is much appreciated. Your voice matters here. Your story matters too. The weeks following the divorce transformed from relief into reconstruction. Every morning I woke up in my house, completely mine now, and had to remind myself that this life was real. No more walking on eggshells, no more calculating which version of myself to present. Just me, Victoria Hayes, learning who that person actually was. Law school consumed my days in the best possible way. The reading was intense, the competition fierce, but I thrived on it. After years of dulling my edges to fit into Daniel's world, I finally had permission to be sharp again. Professor Chen's family law class became my favorite. She was brilliant, mid-50s, with a reputation for being tough but fair. During a lecture on marital asset division, she presented a hypothetical case that sounded suspiciously familiar. Husband opens offshore accounts without wife's knowledge. she said, pacing at the front of the lecture hall. Systematically transfers funds over 2 years. Wife discovers the deception. What remedies are available? Hands shot up around me. I raised mine too. Ms. Hayes. Professor Chen nodded at me. What's your analysis? Dissipation of marital assets, I said, standing as was customary in her class. The court can award the deceived spouse a larger portion of remaining assets to compensate. If the deception was particularly egregious, criminal fraud charges might apply. Additionally, the court might order the deceiving spouse to reimburse attorney fees. Correct. And how would you prove dissipation? Bank records showing systematic transfers, communication evidence demonstrating intent to hide assets, documentation of the marital standard of living versus claims of financial necessity. Essentially, build a timeline showing the fraud was deliberate, not accidental. Professor Chen smiled slightly. Spoken like someone who's actually done this. Well analyzed, Ms. Hayes. After class, she stopped. Me. Victoria, do you have a moment? We walked to her office, books and papers stacked everywhere in organized chaos. She cleared a chair for me and sat behind her desk. I don't usually do this with first-year students, she began, but Catherine Morrison is a friend. She told me about your case, what you accomplished. I shifted uncomfortably. I just documented what was happening. You did more than that. You understood legal strategy instinctively. Catherine said she'd never seen a client gather such comprehensive evidence. She leaned forward. Have you thought about what kind of law you want to practice? Family law, I said without hesitation, specifically helping people in situations like mine. Good. Because I run a clinic here. Second and third-year students work real cases under supervision. Divorces, custody disputes, protective orders. It's usually only for upper-level students, but I'd like you to observe this semester. Get familiar with the work, then join officially next year. My heart raced. Really? You'd let me do that? You've already demonstrated the skills. You just need the technical training. She handed me a card. Think about it. Let me know by next week. I walked out of her office feeling lighter than I had in months. This was it. The path forward. Not just escaping my past, but transforming it into purpose. That evening, I called my mother in Flagstaff. We'd been estranged during most of my marriage. Daniel had always found reasons why we shouldn't visit, why holidays were inconvenient, why my family was too much drama. I'd believed him, chosen him over her repeatedly. She answered on the second ring. Victoria? Hi, Mom. A pause, then warmer. How are you, sweetheart? We talked for an hour. I told her about law school, about Professor Chen's offer, about finally feeling like myself again. She listened without judgment, though I could hear the hurt underneath when I apologized for the years of distance. I should have stood up to him, I said. Should have seen what he was doing. You see it now. That's what matters. Her voice was gentle. I'm proud of you, Victoria, for fighting back, for building something new. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen with tears running down my face. Happy tears, I realized. For the first time in years, I wasn't crying from pain or frustration. I was crying from hope. The next day, I accepted Professor Chen's offer. The law clinic occupied the ground floor of the law building. Small offices, a reception area, conference rooms for client meetings. I started observing twice a week, sitting in on consultations, watching second-year students interview clients under Professor Chen's guidance. The cases were heartbreaking. Women with black eyes and empty bank accounts, men who hadn't seen their children in months because vindictive exes weaponized custody, families torn apart by addiction, abuse, manipulation, During one intake meeting, a woman named Patricia sat across from us, hands shaking as she described her situation. Her husband had isolated her from friends and family, controlled all the money, monitored her phone. She'd finally worked up the courage to leave, but had nowhere to go and no resources. "I don't have any proof," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "He's too careful. Never hits me where it shows, never writes anything down. It's just his word against mine." The second-year student handling the case looked uncertain, but I'd seen this pattern before. Abuse doesn't always leave visible scars. "May I?" I asked Professor Chen quietly. She nodded. I turned to Patricia. "Does he track your location? Check your car's mileage? Ask detailed questions about where you've been?" Patricia's eyes widened. "Yes, all of that. How did you know?" "Because controllers have patterns. They need information to maintain power." I grabbed a legal pad. "Has he ever installed apps on your phone? Made you share passwords? Insisted on joint accounts he monitors?" "He has an app. Says it's for family safety, so he knows I'm okay. But he checks it constantly. Gets angry if I go anywhere he didn't approve." "That's surveillance. It's documented on your phone. We can use it." I looked at the student. "Pull her phone records. Document every time he accessed her location. That's evidence of coercive control." The student started typing rapidly. Professor Chen watched me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Over the next hour, we built Patricia's case, the surveillance app, the financial isolation, the pattern of manipulation and control. By the time she left, she had a plan and hope in her eyes. "Thank you," she said to me at the door, "for understanding." After she was gone, Professor Chen called me into her office. "That was impressive," she said. "You read the situation perfectly, knew exactly what to look for." I recognized it. I met her eyes. "Daniel wasn't physically abusive, but control takes many forms. I learned to see the patterns." Most first-year students would have missed what you caught. Patricia's husband was careful, but you saw through it. Because I lived a version of it. Professor Chen nodded slowly. "That experience, painful as it was, makes you valuable here. You understand these cases from the inside. That's rare." Over the following weeks, I threw myself into clinic work, observed dozens of cases, started recognizing patterns of financial abuse, emotional manipulation, coercive control. Every case taught me something new, added tools to my understanding, and I started helping in small ways. Research for motions, reviewing documents for red flags, sitting with clients while they told their stories, offering the understanding that comes from shared experience. One afternoon in late February, I was reviewing files when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Victoria Hayes." "Yes?" "This is Detective Sarah Reeves with Phoenix PD. I'm calling about Daniel Hayes. Is he your ex-husband?" My stomach dropped. "Yes, what happened?" "He's been arrested. Fraud charges related to his business dealings. His attorney listed you as a character reference." I almost laughed. "Detective, I'm the last person who should provide a character reference for Daniel. So I've gathered from reading the divorce filing, but I wanted to ask if you'd be willing to provide a statement about his pattern of financial deception." "What kind of statement?" "We're building a case for wire fraud. He allegedly defrauded investors in a commercial project, used similar tactics to what you documented in your divorce. Hiding money, falsifying records. Your evidence might be relevant." I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "I'll help. What do you need?" We met the next day at the police station. I brought copies of everything from my divorce case, the offshore accounts, the hidden properties, the messages where Daniel discussed deceiving me about assets. Detective Reeves reviewed it all with growing interest. This establishes a pattern. He'd done this before, knew how to hide money, had practiced deceiving people about finances. Is that helpful? Very. Shows intent and methodology. She looked up at me. You really documented all this yourself? I was a paralegal. I knew what would hold up in court. You're good at this. Ever considered law enforcement? I smiled. I'm in law school, thinking about prosecution or family law. Either way, criminals should be nervous. She closed the folder. Thank you for this, Ms. Hayes. This significantly strengthens our case. Walking out of the police station, I felt a strange satisfaction. Daniel's pattern of deception hadn't ended with me. He just moved on to other victims, but this time, his past was catching up with him. Catherine called that evening. Heard you met with Phoenix PD. Word travels fast. Legal community is small, especially when it involves high-profile fraud cases. She paused. How are you feeling about it? Good, actually. He tried to destroy me financially. Now he's doing it to other people. Someone needs to stop him. The prosecutor is talking about offering a plea deal. 2 years, restitution to investors. Will he take it? His attorney is recommending it. The alternative is trial. And with your documentation establishing pattern behavior, they'd likely convict on all counts. That's 5 to 10 years. 2 years seemed like nothing compared to what he'd tried to do to me, but it was something. Consequences, accountability, a permanent record that would follow him. I hope they throw the book at him, I said honestly. Between us, me too. Finals arrived in early May with the intensity of a desert storm. I'd spent weeks preparing, outlining courses, forming study groups, practicing essay questions. The exams were brutal. 3-hour marathons of hypothetical scenarios requiring analysis of multiple legal issues. But I'd been preparing for this my whole life without knowing it. Every year spent reading Daniel's contracts and business documents. Every skill I developed gathering evidence. Every lesson learned about patience and strategy. I walked out of my last exam exhausted but confident. Results came 3 weeks later. I'd made top 15% of my class. Dean's list, high enough to qualify for law review if I wanted it. Professor Chen sent a congratulatory email. Exceptional first year, Victoria. You have real talent for this. Let's discuss your clinic work for next fall. I'm placing you on the advanced team. My mother called crying happy tears. Your father would be so proud. Even Catherine sent flowers to my house with a card. From paralegal to future attorney. Well done. But the best moment came from an unexpected source. I was leaving campus one evening when I noticed a woman sitting on a bench near the law building. She looked familiar, and after a moment I recognized her. Patricia, the woman from the clinic whose case I'd helped with. Victoria? She stood up, nervous. I hope this isn't weird. I've been hoping to run into you. Patricia, how are you? How did everything turn out? Her smile transformed her face. I got the protective order, and the judge ordered him to stay away, give me access to our bank accounts. I moved out, got my own apartment, started working again. That's wonderful. It's because of you. Her eyes filled with tears. You saw what I couldn't explain. You knew how to prove what he was doing. My attorney said without that evidence, it would have been much harder. I felt my own throat tighten. You did the hard part. You left. You fought back. Because you showed me how. She reached into her purse, pulled out a piece of paper. I wrote down everything you told me that day, about documentation, about patterns, about trusting myself. I've been sharing it with other women in my support group. You've helped more people than you know. After she left, I sat on that bench for a long time, watching students cross the campus, the sun setting over the desert, the city lights beginning to glow. This was why I was here, not just to escape my own situation, but to help others escape theirs. Summer break came, and instead of vacationing, I dove deeper into clinic work. Professor Chen had approved my placement on the advanced team, which meant I could take on cases with supervision instead of just observing. My first solo client was Maria Torres, a 32-year-old teacher going through a custody battle. Her ex-husband was claiming she was unstable, using her past struggle with postpartum depression against her to seek full custody of their daughter. "He never cared about Sophia before," Maria said during our first meeting, anger and hurt mixing in her voice. "Barely saw her. Now suddenly, he wants full custody. It's about punishing me for leaving." I reviewed the case file. The ex-husband's attorney had filed multiple motions claiming Maria was emotionally unfit, citing medical records that showed she'd sought treatment for depression 3 years ago. "May I ask about the depression?" I said gently, "just so I understand the context?" Maria's hands twisted in her lap. "After Sophia was born, I struggled. Postpartum depression. I got help, went to therapy, medication for a few months. I've been fine for years, but he's making it sound like I'm currently unstable." "Did you complete treatment?" "Yes. My doctor has records showing I've been stable since Sophia was 6 months old." "Then we'll get those records. Show the court that you sought help, completed treatment, and have been stable for years. That's not a weakness, Maria. That's evidence of responsibility." We built her case over the following weeks: medical records documenting successful treatment, testimony from Sophia's pediatrician that Maria was an excellent, attentive mother, school records showing Sophia thriving in Maria's care, statements from friends and family about Maria's parenting. But I also dug into the ex-husband's claims, subpoenaed his phone records, which showed he rarely called or texted about Sophia during their marriage, pulled bank records revealing he'd never paid for her activities or medical care voluntarily. "This isn't about Sophia," I told Professor Chen during our supervision session. "This is about control. He's using the court system to punish Maria for leaving." "Can you prove that?" "His own records prove it. He didn't care about custody until she filed for divorce. Then suddenly he's fighting for full custody. The timeline tells the story." The hearing was in mid-July. I sat at the counsel table beside Professor Chen, with Maria on my other side. The ex-husband and his attorney sat across from us, confident they'd win based on the depression angle. His attorney went first, painting Maria as unstable, unreliable, potentially dangerous to Sophia, dramatically reading from old medical records, making 3-year-old postpartum depression sound like current psychosis. Then it was our turn. "Your Honor," I stood, surprising his attorney who'd probably expected Professor Chen to lead. "The opposing counsel wants you to believe that seeking mental health treatment makes my client unfit. I'd argue it proves the opposite." I walked through Maria's medical records, the diagnosis, the treatment, the successful recovery. Then I pulled up the timeline. Here's what the record actually shows. During their marriage, Mr. Torres had minimal contact with Sophia. Phone records show an average of 2 calls per week, mostly lasting under 5 minutes. He attended 3 of her 12 parent-teacher conferences, contributed to her extracurricular activities 0 times voluntarily. I displayed the financial records on the courtroom screen. Bank statements show Ms. Torres paid for 100% of Sophia's expenses from her salary. Mr. Torres claims he wants custody because he loves his daughter. But he didn't act like someone who loved his daughter until Ms. Torres filed for divorce. The judge leaned forward, studying the documents. "This is about punishment, Your Honor. not parenting. Mr. Torres is using Sophia as a weapon to hurt Ms. Torres for leaving him. That's not love. That's control. The opposing attorney objected, but the judge waved him off. I've seen enough. The court finds that Ms. Torres sought appropriate mental health care and has been stable for years. That's responsible parenting, not unfitness. Additionally, Mr. Torres's lack of involvement prior to divorce proceedings is concerning. The judge ruled primary custody to Maria with standard visitation for the father. Walking out of the courthouse, Maria hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe. Thank you. Thank you. I was so scared I'd lose her. You were never going to lose her, I said. The evidence was on your side. We just had to show it. Professor Chen pulled me aside in the parking lot. That was excellent work, Victoria. You saw through the manipulation, built a comprehensive countercase, and presented it persuasively. That's advanced-level advocacy. I recognized what he was doing, I said simply, using the system to maintain control even after the relationship ended. Because you lived it. Yes. She nodded slowly. That experience is your strength. But be careful, it doesn't become your only lens. Not every case is the same as yours. I know, but a lot of them are similar, and I can help those people. You already are. Second year started with new intensity. I'd made law review, was working advanced clinic cases, taking upper-level courses in family law and litigation strategy. My days blurred together in a constant cycle of classes, studying, client meetings, court appearances. But I loved every minute of it. In October, almost exactly a year after my divorce was finalized, Catherine invited me to lunch. We met at a quiet restaurant in Phoenix, the kind of place where serious conversations happen over expensive salads. I wanted to update you on Daniel, she said after we ordered. Is he out of prison? Next month. He took the plea deal. 18 months, got 6 months off for good behavior and overcrowding. I felt nothing hearing it. Not satisfaction, not anger. Just a distant acknowledgement that justice had run its course. How's he doing? Poorly, from what I hear. Lost his real estate license. Melissa cleaned out their joint accounts before leaving him. His mother cut him off financially. He'll be living with his brother in Tucson when he gets out, working construction probably. There was a time when hearing about Daniel's downfall would have felt like victory. Now it just felt like the natural consequence of choices he'd made. And Melissa married someone else, real estate developer in California. Apparently she has a pattern of dating men in that industry. So she moved on to the next target. Seems like it. Catherine sipped her wine. How are you doing? Really? Good. Really good, actually. I told her about my cases, about Maria's custody victory, about the other clients I'd helped. I'm thinking about focusing on family law when I graduate. Maybe litigation. You'd be excellent at it. You understand the emotional component, but you don't let it cloud your strategy. That's rare. I learned from the best. I smiled at her. Thank you, Catherine, for everything. You didn't just handle my divorce. You showed me what fighting back looks like. You showed yourself that. I just provided the legal framework. We talked for another hour, trading stories about difficult cases and impossible clients. As we were leaving, Catherine handed me her card. When you graduate, if you're interested, I'd like to hire you. My firm needs someone who understands family law from both sides, someone who's been through it and come out stronger. I took the card, feeling something shift in my chest. Not just hope, certainty. I'll definitely consider it. Good, because you're going to be an exceptional attorney, Victoria, and I want to work with exceptional people. Third year brought a new challenge, the state bar's character and fitness evaluation, Every law student had to undergo background checks, interviews, disclosure of any legal issues. My divorce was technically public record, available for anyone to see. I filled out the forms honestly, listed the divorce, disclosed Daniel's fraud, my role in gathering evidence, the settlement, waited nervously for the interview. The evaluator, a stern woman named Ms. Patterson, reviewed my file with an unreadable expression. "Ms. Hayes, I see you went through a rather contentious divorce." "Yes, ma'am. Your ex-husband was charged with fraud." "Correct, both in our divorce proceedings and separately for business fraud." "Some might argue you were vindictive, that you went too far in gathering evidence against him." I met her eyes steadily. "With respect, ma'am, I documented crimes. He committed fraud by hiding marital assets. That's illegal regardless of whether it happens in a marriage. I didn't go too far. I did exactly what was necessary to protect myself." "You installed monitoring software on his computer." "On a computer in our shared home, which was marital property. I had legal access to it." "You photographed him without his knowledge." "In public places, which is legal and necessary to document adultery and prove he was lying about his whereabouts." She leaned back. "You seem to have answers for everything." "Because I made sure everything I did was legal. I'm applying to the bar. I wasn't going to jeopardize that by doing something unethical." I paused. "Ms. Patterson, I'm not proud that I had to surveil my own husband, but I'm not ashamed of it either. He was stealing from me, lying to me, planning to leave me destitute. I used legal means to stop him. That's not vindictive. That's self-defense." A long pause. Then Ms. Patterson smiled slightly. "Good answer. Your character evaluation is approved, Ms. Hayes. You'll make a fine attorney." I walked out of that office feeling like I'd passed a test I hadn't known I was taking. Graduation came in May of my 3rd year. I walked across the stage in my cap and gown, accepted my law degree, and felt my mother's cheers from the audience. Afterward, surrounded by classmates celebrating their futures, I found Professor Chen. "Thank you," I said, "for taking a chance on me, for letting me work the clinic, for teaching me how to turn pain into purpose." "You did that yourself, Victoria. I just provided the opportunity." She handed me a wrapped gift. "For your new office, wherever that ends up being." I opened it. A framed quote, "Justice is truth in action." "Benjamin Disraeli," Professor Chen said. "Remember that when cases get hard, when clients seem hopeless, when you're tempted to give up, justice is truth in action, and you're exceptional at uncovering truth." The bar exam in July was the hardest test I'd ever taken. 3 days of intensive testing covering every area of law. I studied for months, took practice tests until I could recite rules in my sleep. Results came in October. I passed on my first attempt. The celebration was small. My mother, Catherine, Professor Chen, a few close friends from law school, but it felt perfect. "To Victoria," Catherine raised her glass, "who turned her worst experience into her greatest strength. The bar is lucky to have you." We toasted, and I felt tears prick my eyes. 3 years ago, I'd been sitting in my bedroom holding a stranger's earring, my world crumbling. Now I was an attorney, licensed to practice law, ready to help others fight the battles I'd fought. I accepted Catherine's job offer the next day, started work at her firm in November, handling family law cases, divorces, custody disputes, protective orders. Every case was different, but the patterns remained familiar. Control disguised as love, manipulation wrapped in concern, abuse hiding behind closed doors. And I helped people see it, document it, escape it. My first major trial came in January, a high-asset divorce where the husband had hidden money overseas. The wife had no proof, just suspicions and inconsistencies in his financial disclosures. "He's lying," she told me in our first meeting. "I know he is, but I can't prove it." "Then we'll find the proof." I opened my laptop. "Tell me about his business, his travel patterns, his banking habits, everything." Over the next 3 months, we built the case, subpoenaed records, hired forensic accountants, tracked every dollar through shell companies and offshore accounts. By the time we got to trial, I had evidence of $2 million hidden in accounts the wife knew nothing about. The judge was not pleased with the husband's attorney's creative explanations. "Counsel," Judge Walsh, the same judge who'd handled my divorce, interrupted. "Your client opened accounts in the Cayman Islands, transferred marital funds systematically, and maintained separate financial records he never disclosed to his wife. That's textbook fraud." The settlement heavily favored my client. Walking out of the courthouse, she hugged me with tears streaming down her face. "You saved my life. I would have walked away with nothing." "You saved your own life by deciding to fight back," I told her. "I just helped you prove what you already knew was true." That became my mantra with clients. I wasn't saving them. They were saving themselves. I was just providing the legal tools to make it possible. The years passed in a blur of cases and victories. Some I won completely, some ended in compromises. A few I lost. Though not many, I built a reputation, the attorney who'd been through it herself, who understood financial abuse, emotional manipulation, coercive control, who knew how to gather evidence that would hold up under scrutiny. Clients sought me out specifically because of my story, and I never hid it. Yes, I'd been where they were. Yes, I'd escaped. Yes, they could too. 5 years after my divorce, I bought a second house, a small place in Scottsdale that I converted into office space for a nonprofit I was starting. Phoenix Rising Legal Services, free legal aid for women escaping abuse who couldn't afford attorneys. Catherine donated money. Professor Chen recruited law students to volunteer. Maria Torres, the custody case from my clinic days, became our office manager. We helped dozens of women that first year, hundreds by the 5th year, each case different, each story unique. But the common thread was always the same. Someone had decided they deserved better, and we helped them get it. On the 10th anniversary of finding that earring in my bedroom, I sat in my office at Phoenix Rising and reviewed our statistics. Over 800 women helped. 75% successful outcomes. Countless lives changed. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Is this Victoria Hayes?" "Yes. My name is Jennifer. I got your number from the domestic violence hotline. They said you might be able to help me." "Tell me what's happening." She told me her story. Her husband was hiding money, tracking her location, threatening to take their children if she left. I listened, already making notes, already seeing the patterns, already planning the strategy. "Jennifer, I'm going to help you, but I need you to understand something first. This is going to be hard. It's going to require patience and planning and courage. Can you do that?" "I don't know. I'm scared." I was scared too. But fear doesn't mean you can't be brave. It means you do it anyway. A pause. Then quietly, "Okay, tell me what I need to do." I opened my laptop and began walking her through the first steps: documentation, evidence, building the case that would eventually set her free. This was my life now. Not perfect, but purposeful. Not easy, but meaningful. Daniel had tried to break me, to take everything I'd built, to leave me with nothing. Instead, he'd given me everything I needed: the motivation to fight, the skills to win, the empathy to help others do the same. I'd lost a marriage, but I'd found myself. I'd lost false security, but I'd gained real strength. I'd lost someone who pretended to love me, but I'd learned what real love actually looked like: respect, honesty, partnership. And if I never found that romantic love again, it would be fine, because I'd found something better. I'd found my purpose. Some days I still thought about that morning in my bedroom, the earring on my nightstand, the moment everything changed. I used to think of it as the worst day of my life. Now I knew better. It was the first day of my real life, the day I stopped being someone's wife and started being myself, the day Victoria Hayes stopped existing in someone else's shadow and stepped into her own light. And that light had illuminated the path for hundreds of others walking similar journeys. That earring hadn't been evidence of betrayal. It had been a gift. The catalyst that forced me to become who I was always meant to be: a survivor, a fighter, an attorney, an advocate, someone who turned her pain into power and helped others do the same. I finished my call with Jennifer, scheduled her intake appointment, and added her name to our case list. Then I looked around my office: photos of clients who'd escaped, letters of thanks, news articles about our work, evidence of lives changed. This was justice, not revenge, though it had started with thoughts of revenge. Real justice meant helping people find safety, reclaim power, rebuild lives. It meant turning the worst thing that ever happened to you into the best thing you ever did. I smiled to myself and opened the next case file. There was work to do. There were always people who needed help, and I'd spent 10 years learning exactly how to provide it. Daniel thought he'd destroyed me. Instead, he'd created someone much more dangerous than a vengeful ex-wife. He'd created an attorney who specialized in taking down men exactly like him. And I was very, very good at my job. This is Revenge Stories, a home for quiet courage and true endings. If Victoria's journey resonated with you tonight, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share in the comments where you're watching from. Your voice adds strength to this community. Your story matters here. Help us continue bringing stories of survival and transformation from around the world. Together, we build something powerful, proof that courage can emerge from pain, that endings can become beginnings, and that no one has to face their battles alone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Your support means everything.